Okay, let's talk about the next tool, which is the trim tool, which is also F6 on your keyboard. There are a bunch of different trim tools: standard, TCE, scrub, and loop. Scrub is only available with HD and LE with one of the video toolkits. TCE we're going to talk about later. That stands for time compression, and it allows us to expand or shrink our audio to fit a certain time amount. We'll talk about standard and we'll talk about loop. Again, I can hit my F6 and toggle through the various modes. We're in standard trim mode, and what it does is it allows me to drag the ends of a region. I've got this tambourine part here, and I can drag it out because there's more audio in the file. If there were no audio in the file, then there wouldn't be anything to drag. But I can drag it out. And since I'm in grid mode, you'll notice it's snapping to my grid, which in my case is bar. But let's say I set it to 8th note. You can see the grid is displayed, and I can drag right to the grid. We go back to bar mode. Now, if I'm in slip mode, I can drag wherever I want. Doesn't matter. Now, we have talked about shuffle mode being a little dangerous, and here's a perfect example why. Let me go into shuffle mode and let me trim this to the left. So let me shorten it and watch what happens to this part over here. You see that? So it also works the other way. It's pushing it away from me. So shuffle mode is fairly dangerous when you're using it with trim because everything to the right will be affected. Now let's take a look at the loop trimmer tool. I have this tambourine part here, and I want to make copies of that. I can always use this repeat or Option R and put in a number of copies, and it will make copies of that for me. But if I use the loop tool, there are a couple more things I can do with it. Again, by pressing F6 repeatedly, I get this, and you see the arrow that's part of the trimmer there. And as I drag out, actually, let me undo that and go into grid mode. So we'll drag along the grid, which is 1 bar. And you can see I've dragged out 4 copies of this loop. It also works, by the way, the other direction. I can drag, and that will create a start of a loop right here. Okay, let me undo that, though. So I have 4 copies of the loop. It's not a perfect loop, because my tambourine player was a little off. Okay. Now, if I drag at the top, I'm shortening the number of loops. However, if I drag at the bottom, you'll notice it changes. If I go over one of these arrows, it changes to a regular trim tool. And then I can drag, let's say, to make this half as long. And now I'm filled with loops that are half as long. And if I want to shrink the number of loops, I just drag up at the top here. There you go. So the loop tool is very, very useful. The last tool I want to show you, again, is only available in HD or LE with one of the video toolkits, and that's the scrub trimmer. Go ahead and undo that. The scrub trimmer has a little speaker icon, and it lets me listen while I trim. So it's very useful for finding the exact part of the file that I want to stop at. And it's not affected. You can see I'm in grid mode. It's not affected by the grid. I can stop right in the middle here, and that's where it will stop. So that's the trimmer tool. There are 4 modes: standard, there is loop, scrub, which is only for HD in the toolkit, and TCE, which we will talk about a little later.